Have you ever walked into your house, expecting to find comfort, only to discover that something you trusted is missing? Something you thought was safe, something you loved, was taken from you? What would you do if the person who took it was someone you trusted the most? It was an ordinary day, at least, it started out that way. The sun was shining through the kitchen window as I prepared my morning coffee, the sound of birds singing softly in the background. Everything was quiet, just the way I liked it. But something felt off, as if the silence had been stretched too thin. I had been through enough in life to know when something wasn't right, and that morning, I felt it. After a few sips of my coffee, I decided it was time to check on something. Something precious to me. For years, I'd kept my jewelry locked away in the safe, a collection that held more than just gold and diamonds. Each piece was a memory: my 20th birthday emerald earrings, my mother's pearl necklace, my husband Ernest's diamond ring. These weren't just material things, they were pieces of my life, my history. I stood in front of the old wooden closet, feeling the weight of the moment as my fingers touched the cool metal of the safe's handle. The combination had been the same for 30 years. 3 turns to the right, 2 to the left, 1 more to the right. I had opened it countless times, never once doubting that my treasures were safe inside. But as I turned the dial, something felt different. The lock didn't turn as smoothly as usual. I shook it a little, thinking maybe the mechanism had jammed. But when I finally heard the click, the door swung open. I froze. It was empty. The velvet lining was bare. No emerald earrings, no pearl necklace, no gold bracelets, no diamond ring. Everything was gone. My breath caught in my throat. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. How could this be? Who had taken it? I heard the faint sound of footsteps behind me. It was Valerie, my daughter-in-law. She stood there in the doorway, watching me closely. A faint smile tugged at her lips, but it was empty, almost too practiced. "Are you looking for something, mother-in-law?" she asked, her voice smooth, almost amused. I turned around slowly, trying to steady my shaking hands. There she was, standing in the doorway, her arms crossed. Her smile was too calm. Too knowing. "My jewelry, it's not there," I whispered. Valerie didn't even flinch. She crossed her arms and nodded. "Oh, right, the jewelry." She paused for a moment, then said, "We donated everything. You don't need that stuff anymore." I felt like the ground beneath me had just disappeared. My heart dropped. What do you mean donated?" "That was mine, they were mine. I've had those things for years, they hold memories." My voice cracked as the shock hit me all at once. Valerie tilted her head, her expression unchanged. "They're just material things, mother-in-law. You always say it's what's in the heart that matters, right? Besides, at your age, what do you need jewelry for? You never go anywhere." I felt a wave of dizziness. My vision blurred as tears began to sting my eyes. I didn't let them fall, though. I couldn't let her see me like this. But inside, I was crumbling. Taking a deep breath, I steadied myself, staring straight into her cold eyes. "You're right, Valerie," I said, my voice surprising me with its calmness. "I don't need them anymore." Her smile returned, a triumphant one, as if she had won some silent battle. But I wasn't finished. Not yet. I took a step closer to her. "But you," I said slowly, "you're going to need a lawyer." The color drained from her face. For the first time in months, I saw her caught off guard. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. And in that moment, I knew this was only the beginning. For 2 years, I had let her walk all over me, manipulative and controlling, acting like she was helping me. I had let her manage my finances, my home, my life. But not anymore. I wasn't the confused, weak old woman she thought I was. I had raised 4 children, built a life from nothing, and had been married to a lawyer for 40 years. I knew how to fight back. Valerie took a step back, her face pale, her hands trembling. "Mother-in-law," she started, but I interrupted her. "Oh, you don't know yet." "But you will soon," I said, my voice sharp. I turned on my heel and walked out of the room, leaving her speechless in my wake. But as I walked, something inside me shifted. I wasn't going to let her destroy everything I had worked for. I wasn't going to let her take away my dignity, my family, or my memories. That afternoon, I made the call that would change everything. I reached out to Patrick Miller, Ernest's best friend and legal partner, the man who had helped us build everything we had. I had trusted him with my life, and now, I needed his help to get it back. I couldn't believe this was happening. I had trusted Valerie, let her into my life, my home, and now she was trying to take everything from me. But I wasn't going to stand by and let her get away with it. This was just the beginning. And I was ready to fight. The next morning, I woke up early. I had been awake for hours, my mind racing. It was like the moment I had decided to fight back, my life had shifted. The house, the one that once felt so full of warmth, now seemed colder. It was no longer just about the jewelry. It was about my dignity, my family, and the future I had spent a lifetime building. As I sat at the kitchen table, sipping my coffee, the phone rang. My heart skipped a beat when I saw Patrick's name on the caller ID. I had been waiting for this call. He had promised to help me, and now it was time to take the first step. "Patrick," I said, my voice steady but anxious. "I'm ready." "Good," he replied. "I've already set everything up. I need you to meet me in my office today at noon. We have a lot to go through." I hung up and looked around the kitchen. I thought about Ernest. He had been the one who taught me to stand strong, to fight for what was mine. I could almost hear his voice telling me to never give up, never back down. It felt like he was still here, still watching over me. When I arrived at Patrick's office, the door was already open. He greeted me with a firm handshake and led me to his desk. He had a pile of documents ready, neatly organized. It felt surreal, like I was finally going to get some control back over my life. "Sit down, Beatrice," Patrick said, motioning to the chair in front of him. "We're going to take this step by step. First, I've reviewed the bank statements you gave me. There's a pattern here: constant withdrawals, transfers, and large purchases made by Valerie in your name, but with no authorization. This is financial elder abuse, and it's against the law." I nodded slowly, feeling a mix of anger and relief. Anger that Valerie had done this to me, but relief because I finally had proof. "I've also hired a private investigator to track down your jewelry," Patrick continued. "And we've found it." I felt a lump form in my throat. "Where? Where is it?" "Pawned. All of it. The emeralds, the pearls, the bracelets. They're all sitting in a pawn shop on the south side of the city. Under Valerie's name." My stomach churned. I had thought it was bad, but hearing the words out loud made it worse. The treasures of my life, my history, gone. Sold for cash. And to make it worse, Valerie had used her name, as if she had the right to sell what wasn't hers. "How much?" I asked, my voice shaking. "For everything?" Patrick hesitated, flipping through the papers. $35,000. I couldn't believe it. $35,000 for my memories. I felt sick, but I was also more determined than ever. I wasn't just going to let Valerie walk away with this. "We'll get it back," Patrick said confidently. "But we need more. We need witnesses, and we need to prove the extent of the fraud. I've already contacted a few people who can testify about Valerie's behavior. But I need you to talk to your children. Get them involved. If they're willing to testify, this case will be much stronger." I nodded, thinking of my kids. Lauren, Charles, Patricia, they had all warned me. They had seen it, but I hadn't listened. Maybe I hadn't wanted to see it, but now it was clear. Valerie had manipulated all of us, and I wasn't going to let her do it any longer. I spent the next few hours gathering my thoughts, thinking about everything I had to do. It wasn't just about getting my jewelry back, it was about reclaiming my life. And it wasn't just about me anymore. It was about Robert, my son, who had been so easily manipulated by Valerie. But I still believed he could be saved. He had to be. That night, I sat down and made the hardest call I'd ever made. I dialed Lauren's number. "Mom," she answered, her voice soft with concern. "Is everything okay?" "No," I replied, my voice steady but filled with the weight of everything I had been holding in. "It's not. Valerie, she's been taking everything. I need you to come home. We need to talk." There was a pause on the other end, then a sigh. "I'm on my way, Mom. I'll be there tomorrow." I hung up the phone and stared out the window, watching the sun dip below the horizon. For the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of hope. My daughter was coming home. She would help me, and together, we would take back what was rightfully mine. The next morning, Lauren arrived. She looked at me with concern in her eyes, and I felt a pang of guilt for not listening to her sooner. But there was no time for regret now. "I'll explain everything," I said as we sat down in the living room. "But I need you to know, Valerie has been stealing from me. She's taken my jewelry, manipulated Robert, and even controlled my finances." Lauren's face went pale. "Mom, I knew something wasn't right. I tried to warn you, but you didn't want to hear it." "I know, Lauren. I should have listened. But I didn't. And now, we need to fix this. We need to get Robert to see what's really going on." Lauren nodded, her eyes filled with determination. "We'll do it, Mom. We'll make this right." That afternoon, I called my other children. Charles was the first to arrive, and Patricia followed shortly after. As we gathered in the living room, I could feel the weight of everything that had happened bearing down on me. But I wasn't alone anymore. I had my children with me, and together, we were going to take Valerie down. "We're doing this together," I said, looking at each of them. "We're going to make sure Valerie is held accountable for what she's done. And Robert needs to see the truth." Charles clenched his fists. "She's going to pay for this, Mom. We'll make sure of it." Patricia wiped a tear from her eye. "You shouldn't have had to go through this alone." "I'm not alone anymore," I said with a small smile. "And neither are you." As the days passed, we gathered more evidence. We spoke to witnesses, including friends who had seen Valerie's manipulations firsthand. And all the while, I could feel Valerie's presence looming. She had no idea what was coming. But there was one more thing I had to do. I needed to confront her. And this time, I wouldn't back down. The walls were closing in on Valerie. She had no idea what was coming for her. But I did. And I was ready to fight back with everything I had. The days felt longer than ever. I knew the moment for confrontation was approaching, and each passing hour only made me more determined. Every time Valerie entered the room, I could see the facade of calm slipping a little, but she had no idea how close she was to losing everything. And I was ready to be the one to show her. That afternoon, I called Patrick. "It's time," I said, my voice steady, though my heart pounded in my chest. "I'm ready to confront her." Patrick was silent for a moment, as if weighing the decision. "Are you sure? Once you go through with this, there's no turning back." "I've never been more sure of anything in my life," I replied. "She's taken too much, and it's time to take it all back." "Okay," he said, his voice firm. "I'll have everything ready. Meet me at my office tomorrow morning. We'll go over the final details, and then we'll make our move." The next day, I met Patrick at his office. He greeted me with the same professional demeanor he always had, but I could see the concern in his eyes. This wasn't just a case to him, it was a battle for my dignity, my life, and my future. He handed me a stack of papers, each one filled with details about the fraud Valerie had committed. There were receipts for the pawned jewelry, bank statements showing the withdrawals, and the records of every lie Valerie had told. I felt a wave of anger rise within me. This was no longer just about me, this was about standing up to the woman who had broken my trust and taken what wasn't hers. Patrick placed a few more documents on the desk. "These are the papers we'll need for the confrontation. Everything is in order. I've also contacted the witnesses. They're ready to testify if needed." I nodded, my hands clenched into fists. The weight of everything was finally starting to feel real. This was happening. It was time. "One more thing," Patrick said, his voice lowering. "You'll need to confront Robert as well. He's been manipulated, and he needs to see what's really going on. He has to understand that what Valerie did was wrong." I swallowed hard. I had been preparing myself for Valerie's reaction, but I hadn't thought much about Robert. He was my son, the one I had raised with so much love. To see him tangled in Valerie's lies hurt more than anything else. But I knew this had to be done. He had to know the truth, no matter how painful it was. When I got home that afternoon, I felt the tension in the air. The house, once a place of comfort, now felt like a battlefield. I had my family with me, but I still felt alone in this fight. As I walked through the door, I saw Valerie in the kitchen, pretending to cook. But her eyes darted toward me, and I saw the nervous energy in her movements. She knew something was coming. She just didn't know how close she was to losing everything. Robert wasn't home yet, but I knew he'd be back soon. I had to be ready. I spent the next few hours gathering my strength, rehearsing my words in my head. This wasn't just about confronting Valerie, it was about reclaiming my life, my dignity, and my place in this house. I had been silenced for too long, and now, I was going to speak the truth. When Robert walked through the door, he looked tired, his face drawn from the long day at work. I had been expecting him to say something, to ask what was going on, but he didn't. Instead, he simply dropped his keys on the table and took a seat at the kitchen counter. Valerie was still in the other room, out of earshot, but I knew this was the moment. "Robert," I began, my voice trembling at first but growing stronger. "We need to talk. About Valerie." He looked up, surprised. "What about her, Mom?" "This isn't easy for me to say, but you need to hear it." I took a deep breath. "Valerie has been stealing from me, Robert. She's been manipulating you, lying to me, and taking everything that belongs to me." Robert's eyes widened. "What are you talking about?" His voice was tinged with disbelief, but I could see the flicker of doubt in his eyes. The same doubt I had seen that day when Valerie had left the house. "I've kept it to myself for too long," I said, my voice steady. She's been taking money from my accounts, selling my jewelry, and controlling every decision in this house. I gave her access to everything because I trusted her, but I was wrong. She's been using you and me to get what she wants. She's taken everything from us." Robert's face twisted in confusion, and he shook his head. "Mom, you're wrong. Valerie would never do that. She's been helping us, helping you." I felt the anger rise in my chest, but I kept my calm. "She's been lying to you, Robert. You've been manipulated. You've been so caught up in what she's been saying that you didn't see the truth. And now, it's time for you to see it." Just then, Valerie walked into the room, sensing the tension. She saw me standing there, my eyes locked with Robert's, and her face froze. She could feel the change in the air. "Mother-in-law, what's going on?" she asked, her voice too sweet, too innocent. I looked at Robert one more time. "It's time, son. You need to know what she's done." I walked out of the room, feeling the weight of the moment settle over me. Robert needed to hear the truth. And I needed to show him. For too long, I had let Valerie control this family, and now, it was time for her to face the consequences. The confrontation wasn't over. It was just beginning. I had my children with me, and now I had the evidence to take her down. But it wasn't just about the money, it was about showing Valerie that she couldn't take everything from me. She couldn't control me anymore. Robert needed to see the truth. Valerie needed to face the consequences of her actions. But one thing was clear, I wasn't going to let her win. Not this time. The evening passed slowly. Every creak of the house, every step down the hallway, seemed louder than usual. The tension hung in the air, thick and suffocating. Valerie hadn't left the kitchen since our conversation, and I could hear her moving about, pretending like nothing was wrong. But I knew, she knew. The walls were closing in on her. I sat in the living room, my thoughts racing. I wasn't just facing Valerie now. I was facing my own son, the one I had raised and loved for years. The same son who had stood by me through so much, who had been the light of my life. And now he was caught in the middle of a storm he didn't even fully understand. I couldn't help but feel a pang of sadness for Robert. He was being torn apart by the lies Valerie had fed him. I had tried to protect him, to shield him from the ugliness that had taken root in his life, but now it was all out in the open. It was time for him to make a choice. And I couldn't make it for him. The front door opened, and I heard Robert's footsteps echoing down the hallway. He came into the living room, his face etched with confusion and frustration. But this time, there was something else, something in his eyes that I hadn't seen before. A flicker of doubt. A flicker of recognition. He looked at me, then at the floor. "Mom, I don't know what to believe anymore." I stood up and walked toward him. "You don't have to believe me, Robert. Just look at the facts. Look at what's happening around you. Valerie is not the person you think she is." He looked up at me, his eyes filled with hurt. "But she's been there for me, for us. She's been helping you. She's been everything I thought we needed." I shook my head, taking a deep breath. "She's been controlling you, Robert. And it's not just about me. It's about her taking control of everything, our home, our money, our lives. You've been so blinded by her manipulations that you didn't see what was happening right under your nose." He took a step back, his hands raised in a defensive gesture. I didn't want to believe it. But now, I don't know what to think. I walked over to the coffee table and picked up the stack of documents that Patrick had prepared. "I'm not asking you to believe me just because I'm your mother. I'm asking you to look at this. These are the bank statements, the receipts, the pawn tickets. This is proof of what Valerie has done. Robert's face paled as I placed the documents in front of him. He sat down slowly, his hands trembling as he began to sift through the papers. He didn't speak for a long time. The only sound in the room was the rustling of the papers and the deep breaths we both took. Finally, he looked up at me, his eyes wide with disbelief. How could she? How could she do this? It's not just about the money, Robert. It's about the control. It's about what she's been doing to us all along. As Robert sat there, reading through the documents, I could see the weight of the truth settling in. He was struggling with the reality of what had happened, but I knew he was beginning to understand. The veil of deception that had been cast over him for so long was finally starting to lift. Just then, I heard the unmistakable sound of footsteps in the hallway. Valerie. She had been eavesdropping, I was sure of it. She had a way of lurking in the shadows, waiting for her moment to pounce. But this time, she wouldn't be able to control the narrative. She stepped into the room, her eyes flicking nervously from Robert to me. "What's going on?" she asked, trying to sound casual, but there was a noticeable tension in her voice. I stood up, my body tense. "We're having a conversation, Valerie. A very important one." She glanced at Robert, who was still sitting with the documents in his hands, his face pale and ashen. "Robert," she said, her voice softening. "What's going on? Are you upset?" Robert didn't answer immediately. He just stared at the papers, the weight of the situation sinking in. And then, slowly, he looked up at Valerie. "I know what you've done, Valerie," he said, his voice hoarse but resolute. "I know about the jewelry. I know about the bank withdrawals. And I know you've been manipulating me, manipulating all of us." Valerie's face went white. Her eyes flicked from Robert to me, but she couldn't hide the panic in her expression. She stepped back, but Robert stood up, his hands clenched into fists. "Robert, no," Valerie pleaded, her voice faltering. "You don't understand. I've been doing this for us. For you. I've been trying to help us move forward. We need the money, we need to start over." "Start over?" Robert's voice cracked with emotion. "By stealing from my mother? By lying to me? By taking everything she's worked for?" The room was silent. The tension was unbearable. Valerie was cornered, and she knew it. There was no way out now. She could no longer hide behind her lies. "Tell me it's not true," Robert said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Tell me I'm wrong." Valerie opened her mouth to speak, but the words caught in her throat. She knew she couldn't lie her way out of this. She couldn't talk her way out of the truth. Instead, she turned to me, her face a mask of desperation. "Please, Beatrice," she begged, her voice trembling. I didn't mean to hurt you. I thought I was doing what was best. I was just trying to help. Please, don't do this." I took a step forward, my heart heavy. "You can't help someone by stealing from them, Valerie. You can't claim to love someone while breaking their trust. You've taken everything from me. And now, you're going to pay the price." Valerie's eyes filled with tears, but I wasn't moved. I had cried too many tears for her over the past 2 years. Now, it was time for her to face the consequences. "Robert, I want you to listen to me," I said, my voice firm. "Valerie has manipulated you. She's taken control of everything, and she's convinced you that she's doing it for the right reasons. But she hasn't. She's done this for herself, to line her own pockets and control us. I don't want you to be a part of it anymore. You have to stand up for what's right. Robert looked at me, his face filled with guilt and regret. I didn't see it. I didn't want to see it. But now I know. You're right, Mom. I reached out and placed a hand on his shoulder. It's not too late, Robert. We can still fix this. But you need to make the right choice now. He nodded slowly, a tear sliding down his cheek. I'll fix this, Mom. I promise. I'll make it right. Valerie was defeated. She had no more excuses, no more lies. The truth was out, and she had nowhere to run. But the fight wasn't over. The legal battle had just begun, and I wasn't going to stop until Valerie paid for what she had done. I had been betrayed, but now I was ready to reclaim everything: my dignity, my family, and my life. The battle was far from over. But for the first time in years, I felt like I had the power to take control of my life again. Valerie had underestimated me. She had underestimated the strength I had left. And now, she would pay for it. The next few days were a blur. I didn't sleep much, didn't eat much. My mind kept replaying the confrontation, the looks on Robert's face as he realized the truth, the disbelief in Valerie's eyes as the walls came crashing down around her. But I wasn't done yet. Not even close. I was still holding on to the anger, the sadness, the sense of betrayal. But now, that anger had a purpose. I wasn't just fighting for the jewelry, for the money. I was fighting for my peace, for my dignity, and for everything I had worked so hard to build over the years. I couldn't let Valerie get away with it. I couldn't let her think that she could walk away from this unscathed. I spent the morning with Patrick, going over the final details. Everything is set, he said, looking over the legal papers. We're ready to move forward. But we need to make sure that Valerie understands the gravity of the situation. She needs to know that if she doesn't make things right, we're taking this to court. I nodded, my hands shaking slightly as I gripped the papers. The thought of facing Valerie in court, of exposing everything she had done, made my stomach churn. But I knew it was the only way. There was no turning back now. That afternoon, I called Robert. It's time, son, I said, my voice steady despite the nerves that ran through me. We're going to confront Valerie once and for all. Are you sure, Mom? Robert asked, his voice hesitant. I don't know if I'm ready. You don't have to be ready, Robert, I replied. You just have to do what's right. And what's right is standing with your family, standing with me, and making sure that Valerie faces the consequences of her actions. There was a long silence on the other end of the phone. Finally, Robert spoke. I'm coming over. I'll be there in an hour. When Robert arrived, he didn't waste time. He walked into the living room and sat down beside me, his eyes still filled with guilt but also a renewed sense of purpose. He had made his decision. And now, we were going to make sure Valerie did too. We have to do this, Mom, he said, his voice strong. I owe you this. I owe you everything. I reached out and placed my hand on his. We're going to get through this, Robert. Together. Valerie was in the kitchen again, pretending to cook as she always did, trying to maintain the illusion of normalcy. But this time, the calm facade wouldn't hold. She knew what was coming. She could feel it. We walked into the kitchen together, Robert and I side by side. Valerie looked up when she saw us, her smile faltering slightly. What's going on? She asked, her voice strained. Why are you both here? I didn't waste time with pleasantries. We need to talk, I said, my voice firm. And this time, there's no escaping the truth. Valerie took a step back, her eyes flicking between Robert and me, but she didn't say anything. She knew what was coming. She had to. I started by laying the documents on the table. The bank statements, the pawn tickets, the transfer records. I had everything in front of me, everything I needed to show that she had taken everything from me, my money, my trust, my memories. I've given you every opportunity to make this right, Valerie, I said, my voice cold. But now, we're done. You can't keep hiding behind lies anymore. Robert stood beside me, his eyes hard. You've manipulated me, manipulated my family, and now it's time to face the consequences. You're not going to get away with this. Valerie's face paled as she stared at the documents in front of her. This isn't real, she stammered, her voice shaking. I didn't do this. I was just trying to help. You didn't help, I said, my voice steady. You stole from me. You lied. You manipulated us all. And you're going to pay for it. She opened her mouth to protest, but I wasn't finished. Robert, I said, turning to my son. It's time to face the truth. Valerie has been using you, controlling you. And it's time you saw her for who she really is. Robert's eyes shifted from me to Valerie, and I could see the inner turmoil in him. The guilt, the shame. He had been caught in the web of Valerie's lies, but now, he was starting to see the truth. Mom's right, he said quietly, looking at Valerie. You've been lying to me. And I let you. I let you control everything. But I'm not going to let you control me anymore. The words hit Valerie like a slap. She recoiled, her face twisted with anger and desperation. You don't understand. I did this for us, for you, Robert. I was trying to make things better. I love you. Love? I spat. Love isn't controlling someone. Love isn't stealing from them. You don't love anyone but yourself, Valerie. And now, you're going to lose everything. There was a long silence. The only sound in the room was the ticking of the clock on the wall, each second dragging on like an eternity. Valerie stood frozen, her eyes wide, as if she couldn't believe what was happening. But I could see it, her mask was slipping. The real Valerie was starting to show, the woman who had manipulated and controlled everyone around her for so long. Valerie, I said, my voice colder than ever, you've been caught. You can't run anymore. The evidence is here. The witnesses are here. And now, it's time to face the consequences of what you've done. She looked at me, her eyes filled with fear. What are you going to do? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Nothing, I said. You're going to do it yourself. You're going to leave. You're going to sign the papers, and you're going to pay back everything you stole. Or you're going to face the full force of the law. Robert stood tall, his posture rigid. You don't have a choice anymore. It's over. For a moment, Valerie was silent. She just stared at us, her chest rising and falling as if she was struggling to breathe. Then, slowly, almost reluctantly, she reached for the papers. She signed each document, her hand trembling, her face pale and strained. When she was finished, she dropped the pen onto the table. Her eyes were empty, and there was no triumph, no victory in her. Only defeat. I'll go, she said, her voice hollow. I'll leave. But don't think this is over, Beatrice. You'll regret this. I didn't respond. There was nothing more to say. Valerie walked out of the kitchen, her footsteps heavy, as if she knew she had lost everything. As the door slammed behind her, I felt a strange sense of peace wash over me. It was finally over. The battle was won. But the story didn't end there. There was still work to be done. Robert was standing beside me, his expression somber but resolute. He had made the right choice, and I could see the weight lifting from his shoulders. "Thank you, Mom," he said, his voice filled with gratitude. "I've been a fool. I should have seen it all along. But I'm glad I did the right thing." I smiled at him, feeling a sense of warmth in my chest. "You've done more than that, Robert. You've come back to me. And that's all I could ever ask for." In the weeks that followed, Valerie stuck to her word. She left, and she began the slow process of repaying the money she had stolen. It wasn't easy, and it wasn't fast. But it was a start. And I had what I needed: my dignity, my peace, and my family back. Robert worked hard to fix his relationship with me. We rebuilt our bond, brick by brick, and slowly, our lives returned to normal. The house that had once felt so cold and oppressive now felt like a home again. As the months passed, I couldn't help but reflect on everything that had happened. I had been through hell, but I had survived. I had fought for what was mine, and I had won. And more than anything, I had learned that no one, not even those closest to you, could take away your dignity unless you allowed it. I had faced the worst storm of my life. But I had come out stronger, more resilient, and more at peace than ever before. And so, as I sit here in my home, my family around me, I know one thing for sure: I will never let anyone take away my power again. The light inside me burns brighter than any jewel could. And nothing, will ever steal that from me. Months passed, and life slowly began to regain its rhythm. Valerie had been gone for good, and the house, my home, felt like it was finally mine again. But it wasn't just the physical space that had returned to normal. It was my inner peace. I no longer walked through these halls with a heavy heart, burdened by the fear of losing everything. Instead, I moved freely, with the confidence of a woman who had fought and won. Robert, in his own way, was trying to make up for the years of mistakes. I saw the effort, even in the smallest things. He helped me with the garden, just like Ernest used to. On Sundays, he cooked breakfast, and we sat together, talking about life, about the past, and about our future. There was a lightness between us now, one that hadn't been there in years. Slowly, we were rebuilding our relationship, one conversation at a time. My other children, too, had become more involved. Lauren, who had always been my rock, came to visit more often. Charles and Patricia followed suit, and soon, the house was filled with laughter, just like it had been before. The absence of Valerie's manipulation left space for love and joy to return, and for the first time in years, I could feel the warmth of my family surrounding me. And then, on a warm afternoon in June, I received a call that would change everything. It was from Patrick. "Beatrice," he said, his voice calm but with a note of urgency, "I think you should prepare yourself. The legal team is moving forward with Valerie's repayment plan. The clock is ticking, but it's looking like she's starting to struggle." "Struggling? How so?" I asked, my mind racing. "She's hit a point where she's had to liquidate her assets. I don't think she'll be able to pay you back the full amount. It's going to take longer than expected." I sighed, staring out the window, watching the sunlight dance on the garden. The past year had been a whirlwind of emotions, but I had managed to take back what was mine: my dignity, my family, my life. "I don't care about the money anymore," I said softly, almost to myself. "I care about knowing that I stood up for what was right. That's the real victory." Patrick's voice softened. "You're right, Beatrice. But it's important we hold her accountable. If we let this go, if we don't make her follow through, it sets a dangerous precedent. I understand, I replied, taking a deep breath. But I can't let the past hold me captive any longer. I've already lost so much. I won't let her continue to take up space in my mind. That night, after I hung up with Patrick, I sat alone in the living room. The house felt quiet, peaceful, even. I reflected on how far I had come. I had lost everything: my husband, my trust in people, my sense of security. And yet, I had gained so much more. I had rediscovered my strength. I had fought for my family. I had reclaimed my life. I thought about the lessons I had learned. That dignity isn't a luxury, it's a necessity. That no one should ever be made to feel small, no matter how old they are. And that sometimes, the hardest battles are the ones we fight within ourselves. The following week, Robert and I spent the day together, going through some old boxes in the attic. He had found some of Ernest's old things, his favorite books, old photographs, and his beloved fishing gear. We laughed as we went through the memories, remembering the man who had held our family together for so many years. "I miss him, Mom," Robert said quietly, as he held up a fishing rod Ernest had once used. "I didn't appreciate him enough when he was here." I smiled, a bittersweet ache in my heart. "None of us did, Robert. But he loved you. He loved all of us. And that's what matters." We spent the rest of the afternoon reminiscing, looking through the photos, and telling stories about Ernest. It was a day of healing, a day of remembering the good times, of honoring the man who had taught us so much about love and strength. And for the first time in years, I felt that Ernest was still here, in spirit, watching over us. As summer turned to fall, life continued to settle into a routine. I spent more time with my friends from the book club, who had been such a support throughout everything. Linda, who had always been there for me, was the first to visit after the chaos had passed. "You look different," she said one afternoon, as we sat on the porch, sipping tea. "You look free." I smiled. "I am. It's been a long road, but I'm finally at peace." Linda looked at me with understanding in her eyes. "You've been through so much, Beatrice. But I've never seen you so strong. I'm proud of you." "Thank you," I said, my voice soft. "I couldn't have done it without you. Without all of you." By the time winter came, I had made the decision to finally visit the small apartment Valerie had given me as part of her repayment plan. Robert had suggested we look at it together, as he thought it might be a good place for him to live once he was ready to move out. We took a trip there one cold Saturday morning. It was small, but it had potential. The walls were bare, the floors needed work, and there was a strange musty smell, but I could see what it could be, what it would become. "Maybe it's time to let go of the past," I said as we stood in the empty apartment, looking out the window at the city below. "I think it's time for a new chapter," Robert said, his voice filled with a mix of excitement and hope. "Maybe we can fix it up together," I suggested. "Just like old times." He smiled at me, a warm, genuine smile. "I'd like that, Mom." A few months later, the apartment was finished. It wasn't perfect, but it was home. Robert moved in, and though I missed him being in the house, I knew it was the right step for both of us. He was becoming the man he was always meant to be: strong, capable, and free from the manipulations of Valerie. As for me, I continued to thrive. I took up painting again, something I hadn't done in years. I spent more time with my friends, enjoying the freedom I had fought so hard to regain. The house felt full of life once again, and for the first time in a long while, I wasn't afraid. I wasn't scared of being alone. I wasn't scared of the future. I had rebuilt my life, piece by piece. And though the scars would never completely fade, I had learned to live with them, to wear them proudly, as part of the story that made me who I am today. And then, on my 70th birthday, something incredible happened. Robert came to visit, but this time, he wasn't alone. He walked in with Andrea, the woman he had been seeing for the past year. She was kind, genuine, and most importantly, she respected him. "Mom, this is Andrea," Robert said, his voice full of pride. "She's someone I want you to meet." I smiled, looking at them both. "I'm glad to meet you, Andrea. I can see how much Robert cares about you." Andrea smiled warmly. "It's an honor to meet you, Mrs. Miller." That night, we had a quiet dinner, just the three of us. It was simple, but it was filled with laughter, love, and hope for the future. As I looked at Robert and Andrea, I realized that, despite everything I had gone through, I had come out stronger. I had fought for my family, for my life, and for my peace. And now, I could finally breathe easy. I raised my glass, toasting to the future, to the lessons learned, and to the family that had stood by me. "Here's to new beginnings," I said, my voice filled with gratitude. "To new beginnings," Robert and Andrea echoed, clinking their glasses with mine. As I sat there, surrounded by the people I loved, I felt a deep sense of peace. I had been through so much, but I had survived. I had learned that no matter what life throws your way, you always have the power to rise again. The road wasn't easy, but I learned that strength doesn't come from the things you own or the people around you, it comes from within. And no matter how many times life knocks you down, as long as you stand tall, you'll always find your way back. The greatest victory is finding peace within yourself. And just like that, the battle was over. Beatrice had fought back, reclaimed her life, and found peace. Through the pain, the betrayal, and the heartache, she proved that no one, no matter how close they are to you, can ever take away your strength, your dignity, or your family. She's shown us that it's never too late to stand up for yourself, to fight for what's right, and to rebuild after the hardest of storms. If this story touched your heart, and if you believe that dignity, love, and strength are things worth fighting for, then please, give this video a like. Let me know in the comments below, where are you watching from? And what lesson did you take away from Beatrice's journey? Also, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, because we've got more powerful stories coming your way. Share this video with anyone you know who needs a little inspiration, because we all need reminders that we can rise again, no matter how difficult life gets. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, remember, your strength is your greatest asset. Never let anyone take that from you. Like this video if you believe in second chances, subscribe for more heartfelt stories, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on the next one. Stay strong, and stay inspired.